Housing Authority. Please let the record show that all commissioners, with the exception of Commissioner Willie, are present. Hopefully she'll be dialed in here shortly. We'll have full attendance today. The minutes were sent out in our board packet, and at this time we'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from our April 16th meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Lowe.
I'll second.
Mr. Crusher seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Any old business to come before the board at this time? There being none, we'll proceed to our new business portion. Turn it over to our Executive Director, CEO, Mr. McGinnis.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We got a lot going on today. And we'll start with assisted housing. So we'll turn it over to Carissa for her report.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We are here to act on a resolution authorizing the certification and submission of March 31st, 2024 CMAP indicator score. Section 8 Management Assessment Program, also known as CMAP, was designed by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to measure the performance of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. CMAP measures performance in 14 specific areas and rates of authorities in accordance with predefined measurements. The finance staff audited the HCV staff CMAP score. Huntsville Housing Authority, HHA, will receive full points for all indicators. Huntsville Housing Authority's CMAP score for fiscal year 2024 will be 100%. Therefore, Huntsville Housing Authority will continue its status as a high performer for another year. We bring before you Resolution 2024-14. Whereas the Huntsville Housing Authority administers the Housing Choice Voucher Program under the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Authority, and whereas HUD measures the performance of public housing authorities to ensure that authorities operate the program as prescribed by statutes and regulations, and whereas the CMAP performance indicators measure performance in 14 specific areas and rate authorities in accordance with the designated formula as high performer, standard, or trouble. And whereas the HCV staff calculated the score for each indicator and the finance department has audited the calculations, and whereas the report anticipates an overall rating of 100%, which is designated as high performer. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Commissioners of Huntsville Housing Authority hereby authorize the Executive Director, CEO, or his designee to certify the score of 100% to HUD.
Thank you, Ms. Woods Danson. Questions? Comments? Anybody got anything?
So just for edification, I read through it. It looked like the same form, but it's broken out by zip code. Is that how they look at it? I mean, 35824 was it the first, and 35806, and it's
Right.
So yes, what we're required to do is because we have small area FMRs, they require for us to go in and put each zip code's information to put the payment standard that we had for the fiscal year and also the current 2024 FMR. So that's the reason why that page repeats 50. I get to put it in 13 times. So that's what's required to be able to submit the CMAP. Yes,
okay.
sir.
And this is our own self-assessment that we then submit to HUD?
Yes.
And then does HUD do a follow-up, come in and do they come visit and double check our standards and our work, or is it just?
Well, they do what they do electronically. I guess they verify, they have something on their side of the system that we don't see, that they do verification to verify our numbers. When our auditors come this year, they will review our CMAP audit that we have completed. And of course, we have a compliance review where it's coming in June, so that information will be available.
That'll be reviewed during the audit. This will be reviewed.
During our regular audit of the CLA, yes, Clifton Larson Allen will look at it, but we will also have it available for the HUD compliance review and also. Yes, sir.
So we've been a high performer in Section 8 for many years. This is like 15, 16 years, something like that.
If the Lord says the same, yes.
I didn't ever recall I scored 100 before. Were there some areas that we've been deficient in the past that we've shored up?
When we did when we completed it, we did have 3 files that had rental adjustment, rental income that wasn't, the half wasn't completed correctly, but we're in the score level. So our score wasn't low enough for it to drop, so we should get 100%. That's why I said we're going to submit for the 100%. We expect it to come back at that.
And I just have on the, read through the form on the family self-sufficiency, and it talks about the DHA has enrolled families, and then, the only reason I'm asking the question, because down there it says, applies only to PHA required to administer the FSS. Then it says check here if not applicable, but we didn't check. Is that because we?
The FSS, go ahead, you can speak to it.
FSS is a voluntary program.
Well, we do have the FSS program. Our beginning slots, I believe, were 40, and we have continued. I think we only have 75, 80 families enrolled. But Tony will also review this before submission.
Okay.
I input the information, but it can only be submitted by the executive director. And if they'll have a status check in there also to make sure we submitted everything. So that all the boxes are checked.
So just for my clarity, I'm probably processing slow. That should be checked, is what you're saying?
Go ahead and speak up.
I don't think we checked this before. I don't think we have.
Yeah, I don't think if we check something that we're not supposed to check, we won't let us submit it.
Okay.
So what I'll do is when we
Okay.
submit it, it'll highlight everything that I don't think we checked it last year. Because again, everybody doesn't have a FSS program, a lot of organizations, so when we get to that, I'll look at it. And if it's supposed to be checked, yeah.
Because it says check here if not applicable.
Right.
So we will update you accordingly. We'll have a status check that will let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, my clarity on, I had a note there, my clarity on there wasn't about the box. I trust you guys to know that piece. I was just trying to better understand the self-sufficiency program, and you clarified it by saying it's a voluntary.
Anything else? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval of the resolution.
So moved.
Mr. Williams,
Second.
Mr. Rose, second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much and congratulations on the scoring. As the agency historian, I'll remember back about 20 years ago when our score dipped into the 60s and some drastic actions were taken to correct that. And I think ever since we really shored it up. But it's not just a given, not just a gimme, as they say on the golf course. All right, so very good with that. What we got next?
Financial services, Teresa?
Well, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
All right, presentation of the low-income housing finance report for the period ended March 31st, 2024. I want to say that this is where we stand before the audit takes place. So this really is a draft. Once the auditors come in and review our standing, then we'll know what the final numbers are. I did not provide you any explanations because we were probably within 10% overall in each one of the categories. Our total revenue ended up being favorable at this point when we get to 331. We are trending under on total administration. Asset management fee, we were off by $100. Total tenant services also ends the year under budget. If you turn to the second page of the financials, our utilities, we had a slight increase there. And then material costs, when we get toward the end, we also were unfavorable there as far as total maintenance is concerned, but only a variance of negative 5.54%. And as we move further down the statement, we also had our payment in lieu of taxes was higher, which we're glad of. We get to send that to the city. That means we were successful in collecting more rent, less the write-offs that we had for the year. As you can see, the collection loss also ended up favorable. So overall, we do have a loss, a decrease in unrestricted position of 1.3,743,02.83. So we're right there within the budget. We're unfavorable by $112.84. So anyway, like I said, it is a draft. When the auditors come, they will come and present their report in September, because August is our yearly meeting. So they will be here in September to present the audit. So if you have any questions for me, I'll take them at this time. If not, that's my presentation.
When you mentioned payment in lieu of taxes, that you sent to the state, so to explain that process.
We have what we call pilot, and it is a calculation where we take our total rent less our write-offs and also the amount we pay in utilities. And so it's a computation that was completed at the end of each fiscal year. And at that time, because we don't pay taxes, at that time we submit our payment to the city of Huntsville.
Thank you. Anything else, any questions or comments? That doesn't require a vote, the resolution attached. Thank you for the presentation. And at this time, I believe we'll move forward to real estate development.
Yes, sir. Sir Keeson.
Sure. Good afternoon. And so I'm going to be presenting an act, move that we accept the act on the resolution authorizing the executive director, CEO, contracting officer to submit a disposition application to the Special Application Center for Mahogany Row, and those units are 910, 912, 921, and 9022. 9021, 9012, and 9010. HHA seeks board approval to submit an application because HHA has determined that the necessary modifications and/or rehabilitation to the project is physically obsolete and not cost-effective to repair, i.e. the cost exceeds the HUD total development cost limit threshold, which is 57.14%. So the purpose is to dispose and sell those units. The justification, the Special Application Center requires evidence of specific authorization for any PHA disposition request through a board resolution. The economic impact, physically obsolete, means that there are structural deficiencies that cannot be corrected at a reasonable cost. There is an attachment. You guys saw the physical needs assessment attached. So the recommendation is for the executive director, CEO, contracting officer to approve the resolution as recommended.
So, we'll take questions and comments. I guess my first question, so our intent is to sell the property as is, or we're not going to do the
As is.
And so, we took great pride when we bought these back in 15 years ago or so, saying in response to the neighborhood and, other property owners around us that we're taking better care of our property than any of the other owners, and that it's very well maintained. And I think you and I have talked about that it appeared to be, but when we started doing some work over there, we uncovered all this water damage, and is that pretty much the size of it?
Yeah, we actually were at one point going to mitigate or
Right.
those, and when we started to go into it, we had a lot of water intrusion, a lot of stuff that you couldn't see with the physical eye. So then we went back and said, okay, it's going to be more than the proposal was, almost about $400,000. And so at that point, we kind of put it on hold, and then COVID hit. And so everything just kind of got put on hold until we started being able to go back out there and look at them again. And so at the time, we had some potential of sale, but it didn't follow
Right,
very well.
we discussed it as a board.
But, so when we finally were able to go back out there again, I mean, of course, the same situation, so they just kind of been unoccupied for the last 3.5, 4 years, except for one unit.
Are there a lot of other units out there that are owned by other property owners that are in the same type of condition?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty bad right now. That neighborhood is not the neighborhood that it was 15 years ago, but even now, it's even worse.
And I would also like to add that out of the 4 buildings, only one of those buildings are habitable. The other 3 buildings, we've been for a number of years just boarding them. We went through a process of getting another appraisal on all 4 of those buildings as well. The one occupied building, it appraised fairly okay, but the other 3, they just kind of zeroed themselves out. The value of the appraisal it's just not conducive for the rehab that's attached to it.
So, my question, I guess, and you answered it, but about the neighborhood and the surroundings, but I understand it's like multiple property owners. It's not like one master, property owner that owns the entire development. Different buildings are owned by different owners. Are there other units boarded up out there and uninhabitable, or is it?
So there's not any other units that are boarded, but from the site, just from a visual aspect, they won't, I don't think they'll carry their value either.
It's substandard,
Yes.
become a substandard housing neighborhood. That's a shame. It's a really good location, good property, good piece of property. Maybe,
And I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to go through the pictures that's attached to the packet. You can see the separation of the stairs, inside and outside. The balconies are just structurally unsafe. So,
I wonder if community development's not enforcing code on some of the other properties down there. It sounds like it's a hazardous place to live right now.
well, it's not a good place, and I think that community development, the way they sit back, they're not, you can't hardly see them from the street. And if nobody complains about the actual property, it means the property will not go out.
It's like some of the tenants who complain.
What do we think the potential for closing the sale? We just,
So we have some inquiries about the purchase of the building, and then we've been talking to a couple of groups about the purchase of that. So once you guys approve the disposition of it, then we'll be able to really go into some serious conversations about the sale of the property. We will most definitely advocate to get the highest price of those properties, because we understand that we can then put that money back into our system.
Somewhere in the report, it mentioned that our efforts to secure the building over the last 3.5 years have failed and more water damage occurred. Did I read that correctly?
No, you're correct.
Okay. So is that something that, just looking in hindsight, is that something that we should have been more, I mean, was it kind of just out of sight, out of mind, and we didn't revisit it, or how did our securing efforts go awry?
Sure, like Tony mentioned a second ago, I think COVID was one of the massive factors in why we were slow to move on Mahogany Road. But I think we did as much maintenance as we could that made sense for the development, just to try and make sure that they stood as much as they could.
A lot of it is coming from the balcony issues. And so when they took the balconies down, they started to see where the water was coming in. And so once you took those balconies down, then that caused a lot more damage as well, because the water was actually coming in through a lot of the balconies. The balconies were built pretty badly in the beginning. And so for us just to kind of have them sit there and not do anything during that time, but to try to secure them. So again, at one point, we had people living in them. We moved them out because of some of the issues we had, and so we boarded them up. And the goal at the time was to try to fix them and repair them, but it was just too much of a discretion in what it was going to cost and what the proposal was. So we would have to go back to HUD and get them to approve it, but it just wasn't, it just didn't make sense at that time. And so doing all that, like I said, we just totally left them alone while COVID was going on. And then when that came out, we went back and started to entertain them again. And so they, like I said, they sat for a number of years without anybody else. And I'll say, even with that, when we go down there and look at what's around there, they're only bad, well, I ain't gonna say they're only bad because they're housing authority properties, but they're still comparable to some of the units that are out there now. And that's kind of sad as well.
I think I'm going to abstain from this one though, just because I think a lot of I have some accountability questions, most that predates me. And so I don't want to belabor a conversation. It's just an accountability clarification that I'm missing. I'm missing, how COVID generally impacted. So I have questions. So I think I'm just going to abstain so that I don't belabor.
But I like the entertainment though.
Yeah. Just, I'd love to have an underappreciation, because I get how COVID shifted a lot. But with relationship to a building that was boarded, had no occupants, how did COVID impact it? I mean, because we're not talking about moving people. I just timeline, just a more structured response versus just a generalized COVID impact would help me to better process.
Sure. So, and you're right, a lot of this will predate me as well. So when they purchased the building, it was completely new.
Okay.
And then there became a time where we had to do some modernization.
Okay.
And doing that is when we were able to identify the deficiencies beyond just your the severe structural deficiencies. And then the Housing Authority then set aside some funding to do that, and then COVID hit. And at that point, families had already transitioned. From the research that I could gather, the Housing Authority wanted to be smart with their funds, and so if nobody was in those units at the time, then
the sense of urgency wasn't there.
Yes.
And I'll say this, we didn't even go into our own units for 2 years, public housing units. So there was a period of time where there was no maintenance unless it was an emergency. And so that's one of the reasons. We didn't have any families out there, so we just didn't have a need to go into a unit that wasn't occupied.
And so you already have units that are we're working on. Then COVID hit, we can't go in, so they're already wide open.
So we didn't have site-based maintenance there like we do at multifamily, which is probably another conversation for another day, but it seems like we're struggling a little bit with scattered site. We have maintenance facilities and maintenance employees on site at most of the developments, but like Meadow Hills, it seems like we struggle to keep those maintained. It's challenging when you have remote locations scattered like that. So
It does give me a clear appreciation for the fact that there were things that we couldn't see with people in that were exposed once they moved out. I just guess just overarching culture of accountability themes. I get that COVID sends a lot of people home, but if we have a site that doesn't have any people, so there's no risk of exposure, it seems like that shifting of personnel would have been a prime opportunity to go in, adequately assess, and to bring things. But I don't want to, again, I know it's much easier to sit and look at history and reevaluate from when we sit in the midst of it. So I don't want to be guilty of that, but it does help me to appreciate that a lot of this is historical account. And that you had to go back and research to see. Yeah, so I appreciate it.
Anything else? So the resolution's just the first step. We go into HUD for getting permission, getting approval for disposition of buildings.
Do we anticipate HUD coming back with any questions? I mean, is this standard or is this?
It's standard, but at the same time, they can come back with questions. I mean, it's not you put the application in and they approve the process. I mean, they're gonna ask some questions, and hopefully, we've answered those on the front end and not having to answer them on the back end.
Going to the special application center. All right, anything else? Is there a motion for approval of the resolution as presented?
Give a motion to approve.
Hello?
Second.
Williams, second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Let the record show that Commissioner Crutcher abstained. Is Commissioner Willie on? Aye. There she is. Aye, we got aye. Got 4 ayes. All right, I believe that's all the agenda business for today. At this time, we'll move to our Executive Director, CEO comments.
All right, I have a few since we were ahead of schedule. One, I want to say that I appreciate the board in just understanding and us going to different platforms and trying to make this thing a little bit easier communication-wise. That there are some hiccups that have caused us to kind of operate on a level that's not sufficient. And so I appreciate you all understanding that. But also want to say thank you for everybody who's either staff or a board member for where we are right now in Housing Authority of Huntsville history. We're in a very unique position to position our authority to be in a place where I don't think we could have imagined without us just kind of coming together and partnering with the city and really having some tough conversations. And the staff, you know, from time to time, we get beat down by the community pretty hard, or by the field office. It doesn't seem like we have a lot of allies, but when we come together in board meeting and we're able to have solutions and resolutions to things, it makes our job a lot more enjoyable. And so I just want to commend the staff and the board for the support that we have going into this week. I think Thursday is going to be a monumental day for the Housing Authority, where we'll have a chance to solidify $50 million grant to reimagine this whole community, Butler Terrace Traditional Sparkman Homes. And to see it being done the way it's going to be done is just awesome, and it just speaks volumes to everybody who's a part of that. And 9 organizations got that letter saying that they were a finalist, and 6 will actually get another letter saying that they have made the cut. And so I'm excited about our odds, because I think we have one of the stronger applications. We just don't know what happens. I'm sure Denver Nuggets last night thought that they were going to go to the finals, but things happen, but I just want to say that because I truly believe we're in a very unique position as a housing authority to get some real things done in a community that's been overlooked for a ton of years. So I'm just grateful for that. And for those who are able to stay back, today we're going to celebrate some graduates who've gone through a program that will give them an opportunity to have another level of self-sufficiency. And that's one of the things that we talked about in our strategic plan, is just positioning families in a position where they can just go out and do better for themselves. So I'm excited about that as well, and that's all I have to share today.
Thank you. Look forward to Thursday as well. It's a big day, monumental opportunity to have a HUD site visit, check out our application. Any public comments? Anybody sign up for public comments? Okay. We'll go ahead and do the commissioner comments before our presentation. Anything, Commissioner Crutcher?
Yeah, just real briefly, I had a conversation with Judge Frank Barger this morning, and he was just really, just bringing to my attention a desire for them to really partner with their mental health clients that come through. They have a new program that they're managing through the probate court of Madison County, and one of the needs that they've identified as a reoccurring need is affordable housing for those that have mental health diagnoses. And the challenge is because in Madison County, a lot of our mental health individuals also end up with criminal records. And so their criminal records, due to their untreated mental health that's now being treated, is a significant barrier to them getting affordable housing. And so they really are hopeful to be able to engage the Housing Authority in meaningful conversations to see if this is in any way a barrier that we can creatively overcome with collaborative partnerships among the professionals that support these individuals. So not to lower the standard and just create pandemonium in our infrastructure, but to be able to partner with accountable partners that are stewarding their respective areas of interest, so that those individuals that were not served well by a fragmented mental health system and it resulted in an incarceration, that we don't perpetuate a problem by having them sleeping out on the streets once they have treatment and support.
Judge Barger's the probate.
Absolutely.
Just with those. Thank you.
At breakfast with him this morning, he was just sharing.
Commissioner Lowe? Rick? And for me, so move forward with that.
Well, we're not gonna start that till about 12:45.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. We will stand adjourned.